I've weighed the idea of running for office on and off all my life. I've seen things in my local area I would fight to change, though that would require giving up all my other hobbies, including YouTube, and be single-minded focused on running. With my ADHD and spectrum disorder, I'm not sure that would ever work. That said, I do have a handful of ideas I'd propose in my city using my experience outside the city that would improve it. However, literally every single representative I have, except for senators, is a minority, and I have no interest butting in and taking away what little representation they already have. I love where I am, so I have just one office I could run for that I would be even remotely good at. City Council at large, of which there are multiple seats. So what would I do if I ran? Well, I know that power corrupts even the best of us, and the theory of direct democracy appeals to me. It's an anarchist socialist idea, but if I ran, it would be a side effect of a bigger campaign. There have been people who have tried doing that with apps running for office, but there's a bit of an issue with hacking and lack of participation and access to the app. Basically, I would try and organize people into direct democracy voting to tell me what to do, and maybe the rest of the at-large would be forced to do the same, while the divided areas would force their local city council leaders to do what they wanted. A long time ago, listening to ANCAP arguments, I designed a system of ground-up government and called it the Liberty Constitution. This was back when I was a Ron Paul libertarian, not realizing that I had essentially reinvented anarchism, completely oblivious to the fact that anarchism was even a real thing. It was a template for a small collective government to multiply into multiple small collective governments, with direct democracy representatives to larger government bodies, who would then send direct democracy representatives to a higher body, each body directly representing more and more people until it represented everybody. My plan used a lot of libertarian ideas and language, and there would be a few things I'd change, but otherwise it's kind of a solid idea, in theory, to at least try, as I'm not the only one to come up with the idea. The population I would be representing would be around 1.5 million people. So first things first, I would begin organizing to recruit block captains in each area to go organize to set up these local governments and meet with people to get contacts and ask for their input. These would be organized into units of 50 people, man, woman, and child. They would hold local meetings and meet with people who can't get out. This would add a level of fighting loneliness and creating community. These block captains would then meet in groups of 50 representing 2,500 people as a body, each bringing their votes in and adding them up to the total votes. If the people didn't trust their block captains anymore and thought they were changing some of their votes, they could always vote them out and replace them immediately. Votes would apply to all people 16 years or older, as they can make long-term decisions just as well as adults can. It's their short-term decision-making that's got some issues, and if people with dementia are legally allowed to vote, 16-year-olds can vote too. Next, these groups would send a representative of their own to a body of 50 people, also bringing their votes and combining them together. This body would represent 125,000 people. They would elect someone who went to a higher body, in this case around 10 people, and report their total compiled vote count to me. My job would then be to sit through council meetings and post explainers of both sides of the issues as best I could, and allow for arguments from both sides to be delivered in easy-to-understand ways to the average person, which would also be the job of the representatives below me. I would then basically vote blindly based on the direct democracy verdict my group of 10 gave me, based on the total votes they compiled. My job would not be to govern, but to educate, so people could be informed and be a delivery boy of the people's vote count. If possible, I would sign a legally binding contract with the voters, with maybe some emergency powers in case of some forces of nature. With this direct democracy army behind me, I, or anyone else who also wanted to represent like this at large, would sweep the board in the elections. I'd only lose if there were more people who also were beholden to the direct democracy army than there was seats, and I'd be 100% fine with that. I'd have built the infrastructure. And heck, my group of 10 could easily be the regular city council members who I took the aggregate of the majority from and just take my marching orders from them, and they would vote based on their constituents' votes below them. This would probably be possible starting with local mutual aid groups, but there would almost certainly be people who don't care and their vote would probably be considered nil. However, way more people would be interested in politics if they felt they actually had a say in it. And people would have community again and know their neighbors, and there would always be someone to check in on the elderly as a block captain. I would probably use the decentralized social media platform Friendica as a way to help keep representatives in touch and hopefully spread its use, weaning people off other social media platforms since it's open source and the servers can be locally run and admins can limit who can be on it. Probably part of the system would be to create an instance for every body of 50 that exists. If this could spread, there could be 4 tiers of 50, and the 4th one would represent the votes of all of the US at 312 million people, which would cover most, if not all, the people at voting age. 1/5 level body of 20 to 25 people could represent the entire planet, everyone represented. But this is at the moment just a pipe dream and an idea. If anyone would like to have this kind of government, maybe you should get with your local mutual aid groups or maybe start organizing block captains in your areas so you or someone who agrees with this can easily sweep the board in elections, as they literally have the complete will of the people behind them as just a delivery boy or girl for those votes. Just a note, I believe this is a form of what anarchism is, but every time I try to define anarchism, I always get someone coming up in the comments acting like I'm an idiot and telling me that that is wrong too. There is a form of consensus democracy where nothing gets passed unless everyone agrees on it, but this would be required to be in place, in my opinion, for a while to create a culture of just having and normalizing direct power and organizing before we could go to a consensus version. They say that majority rule is tyranny, but that would require people to be a lot more reasonable. German union workers are much more flexible and cooperative with their companies because they actually have power and are paid to do union activities, and everyone spends time learning how to organize and run their unions. In the US, thanks to the Taft-Hartley Act, the unions have little power or tools, and the workers often don't feel represented by their leaders, and so they go on strike often over stuff that seems stupid, basically because they have no chance of getting what they actually want and deserve, a seat at the table. Shared power is much more rational than top-down power, so vote for the PRO Act to kill the Taft-Hartley Act, and give us unions that work instead of the type people rightly criticize because they have one arm tied behind their back. And if I'm wrong about what anarchism is, please let me know so I can once again be 100% confused and say yet again, I still don't have a clue what anarchism actually is and how it works. So I'm at best a mutualist and we'll just go from there. So as always, thank you all for watching this as a video or listening to this as a podcast, which I'm sure was completely uncontroversial to anyone, especially to the YouTube monetization team. So if you found this useful, please donate to my Patreon. Just a reminder that I'm Anubis2814 on YouTube, and I have almost 700 videos on my channel that I've made over the past 11 years on religion, science, psychology, and politics. Please go check them out, and if your site has the option, like, rate, review, and comment. A special thanks goes out to Kendall Copperberg, Ogrel, Elias Garcia Guevara, and Joe Taylor for their $10 or more Wapawet level donations. I'm always humbled by the fact that they find my work worth funding and worth driving me forward. Thank you all. Please consider donating to my work if you can, and thank you all for listening.